The deficit supercommittee stalemate escalates. There's a growing number of lawmakers from both parties pushing the panel towards compromise. Chief Washington correspondent Peter Cook is on the Hill with one of those lawmakers. Peter?
Deputy, thanks very much. I'm joined here by Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He is part of this group of about 150 lawmakers, both parties, both chambers of Congress, pushing the supercommittee to find $4 trillion in deficit savings. Congressman, as we look at it right now, it looks like they're going to be lucky to get to 1.2, which is their target.
Yeah, well, we're really short on time now. We do still want them to do the $4 trillion. Remember, they can do that in two ways. They can either do it right off the bat, and look, at this point, reforming the tax code, all the challenges that are involved in that are difficult. But you know what they can do? They can hit the 1.2 trillion, avoid the sequester, and set up a process. Set up a process by which you find what at that point will be another $2 trillion in deficit reduction over 10 years. So at this point, that's my hope.
Well, right now, what is it you're hearing from your Democratic colleagues? Some of those in the room, in these negotiations, I mean, the body language we're seeing from a lot of these folks is that they're not anywhere close to a deal.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. Look, the reason I don't think that's right is that, first of all, in this building, you never know until the absolute last minute, and we're not quite to that last minute. We're close. Secondly, look, the Republicans did put new revenues on the table, which conceptually is a huge step for them. The Democrats have been saying we're willing to talk about more spending cuts and a fair reform of our entitlement programs. Just those two statements mean that there is some common ground there. And look, if nothing else, the automatic cuts, the sequesters that kick in, they're pretty brutal. So my guess is that these guys are going to pull something out to avoid those sequesters.
Well, so brutal that there are a lot of folks talking about if there is no deal, then Congress is just going to undo the sequesters, undo what was put in place by the debt ceiling deal. What do you make of that and the likelihood that's going to happen?
Peter, I think that's the worst of all worlds. I mean, that would basically be this institution saying we can no longer govern ourselves, much less the country. We're going to put in these scary hammers that, kick in if we fail to reach an agreement, and we fail to reach an agreement, oops, we're going to take those hammers away. I mean, talk about total and utter dysfunctionality. That would really, I think, damage Americans' confidence in this institution.
You spent some time on Wall Street. What about the market reaction to that? What about the market reaction around the world? There's so much focus on Europe right now, but if the supercommittee doesn't reach a deal, if we have real uncertainty here, what's that going to mean?
Well, that's a more interesting question than perhaps it appears to be on the surface. And look, I think the markets have been pretty darn focused on Europe. It's a very scary situation over there now. But remember this, if the supercommittee fails, and they could, we've already done $1 trillion of the $4 in August, right? If they fail, there's an automatic $1.5 trillion, and then behind that, you've got a year from now the expiration of the Bush tax cuts. You put those three things together, and you've got your number. It's a stupid, unthoughtful way of getting done what we need to get done, but it gets done. So it's not clear to me. Look, obviously, a good deal by the supercommittee, I think, leads to a real upsurge in market confidence, but it's not clear to me that failure necessarily means catastrophe. Not hoping for it, but we get there. We just get there stupid if we don't act through the committee.
I've heard from some of the folks close to the supercommittee negotiations that, listen, they welcome the support from this bipartisan group, you and Republicans stepping up, say, listen, go big, put everything on the table. At the same time, they say, why don't these guys just put some legislation on the floor and actually do it themselves?
Well, that's an option. And I'll tell you what, if the supercommittee fails, there will be a strong impulse to do that. But the reality is, look, 535 people, the Senate and the House, are going to have a much more difficult time making the tough decisions than 12 people are. So right now, our fingers are crossed for those 12 people to find the political courage to get uncomfortable, to take some risks, to get us where we need to go. If they fail, we'll try with 535. That's just a tougher sell.
There's some talk that one of the stumbling blocks here is increasing the eligibility age for Medicare. Democrats have resisted that. I'll put you on the spot. As a Democrat, is that something you think this supercommittee should consider and you could support?
Well, I have said from the start that everything needs to be on the table, that in these negotiations you do not walk in and say these 5 things are off the table. I will tell you this, though. Personally, you asked me my opinion. We talk about raising the age of Social Security. That is something that I and a lot of other Democrats are willing to entertain. Why? Because if people want to or if they need to, they can work a little longer. Health insurance is a little different, right? If you're 66 years old and you don't have access to Medicare, you think there's a private market option out there for you? You think a private company is going to say, sure, we'll insure you as a 66-year-old? Different deal than Social Security.
All right, fine. I'll just ask you to put your Wall Street hat back on from a few years back. If I'm on Wall Street, I'm looking at Congress, looking at this situation here. Is the bet now that there's something that gets done?
I have said all along that I think there's a better than 50% chance that these guys get their $1.2 trillion done. I still think that's the case. But look, one thing I've learned in my 3 years around here is that you do not know until the last couple of hours.
All right, Jim Himes is a Democrat from Connecticut, pushing the supercommittee to go big. And right now, it looks like they'll be lucky to go small. But we'll see. Still some time left.